How did we get to October 7th? I think for me, the story starts first in 1948, then in 1967, then in 2007. Those are the three turning points over the past 75 years, and let me briefly go through each one. In 1948, Zionists and then Israelis expelled 750,000 Palestinians from their homes and then shot at anyone who tried to return to their homes in the year and a half after the war. In fact, in 1949, 1950, Israel slaughtered more than 1,000 armless, defenseless Palestinians returning to their home after a war. And I think even to understand how we got to October 7th, you have to understand that 75% of the people living in Gaza as of October 6th were refugees from that war or their descendants. So you're dealing with a population who never believed they lost the right to live in Palestine, owing. The population never lost the belief that they have a right to live in Palestine, even though they were violently ethnically cleansed from it. So I think that's the first thing to say. Um, and so from and so I think the next major turning point in this in trying to understand how we got to where we got to today is 1967. Israel occupies Gaza, the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and other parts in Sinai and the Golan Heights. And from 1967 to 1987, Israel is militarily occupying the West Bank and Gaza, and on average kills 32 Palestinians every year for 20 years, kills 630 Palestinians over the course of those 20 years. This is before the rise of Hamas. This is before there are rockets flying into Israel. This is before there are any terrorists in Gaza or the West Bank, by Israel's own admission. And so it's a brutal military occupation. In 1986, there's an interesting poll that is conducted in which Palestinians are asked, you know, they're asked 1,000 people are polled in 86, and 50% of them report being harassed or physically abused at checkpoints. More than 50% of them, 20% have their homes demolished or sealed. 30% are prevented from leaving abroad. Many report being a political arrest. Something like 50% report political arrest. So basically, you have this brutal military occupation, which Palestinians are being abused, harassed, killed, arrested, detained. This leads to the outbreak of the First Intifada in 1987, in which there's a spontaneous, uprising, overwhelmingly nonviolent, especially initially in the first year. Israel slaughters 142 Palestinians in Gaza. Gazans kill 0 Israelis. That radicalizes organizations that were previously charity organizations like Hamas, who turned to violence. And then, the Palestinians in Gaza increasingly over the 90s turned to violence as a result of Israel's brutal suppression. In fact, you don't even have the first Hamas attack on civilians until December 1990. Okay, which is in response to a protest in October 1990, in which Israel slaughtered 22 defenseless Palestinians. So that radicalizes Hamas even further. But even it's not really until 1994 when Hamas really embraces violence. Why? Baruch Goldstein enters the Ibrahimi Mosque in Hebron and slaughters 29 Palestinian worshippers in a massacre. That radicalizes Hamas even further. And so it's really not until the late 90s, from 94 to 2000, that Hamas really fully embraces violence. And then I think really to fully understand and appreciate how we got to where we got to today, Hamas obviously it takes power in Gaza, and they win the January 26 elections, and democratic elections, free and fair elections, and the international community, although apparently believes in democracy, just doesn't believe in democracy when it doesn't like the result. The international community, together with Israel, imposes this land, sea, and air blockade on Gaza. And so for the past 16 years, from 2007, when Hamas took power in Gaza, to the present, Israel has imposed a suffocating blockade and siege that leads to the death of thousands of innocent Palestinians over the course of that 16-year period. It has also waged 5 wars on the Gaza Strip. In 2008, it killed 1,000 innocent Palestinian civilians. In 2014, it killed 1,500 innocent Palestinian civilians. In 2018, it slaughtered Palestinian defenseless protesters, nonviolent protesters, marching to the wall in the Great March of Return, killed 250 Palestinians during that protest. And then in 2021, again, it waged another assault on Gaza and killed another 100 Palestinian civilians, 250 Palestinians total. So you've got 5 wars waged on Gaza. You have 16 years of blockade and siege on Gaza, always illegal because it's punishing innocent civilians who took no part in the hostilities, who do not even support Hamas, who were kids at the time Hamas was elected or were unborn at the time that Hamas was elected. So a brutal 16-year military siege, 56 years of occupation, and 75 years of displacement as a result of the creation of the refugee problem by Israel in 1948. And I think really to understand October 7th, you need to understand that entire history.